Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Ibn Ata'illah says, علم قلة نهوض العباد إلى معاملته فأوجب عليهم وجود طاعته فساقهم إليه بسلاسل الإيجاب عجب ربك من قوم يساقون إلى الجنة بالسلاسل. This is quite an interesting aphorism of his. He says, he knew of the irresolution of servants in dealing with him. He knows that people are going to be lazy, people are going to become a bit heedless in between. There's not going to be firm resolution as we have with some awliya Allah who are completely in form, completely in sync, and they are constantly in contact. Most people are irresolute. They worship at convenience. And when they don't feel like it, they miss even salat. It's ajib. There was one alima, she contacted me. She's, I think, she was second year or third year of alima. And she says, I don't pray any salat. I don't pray any salat. I was shocked. First time I heard that. I thought, okay, I delay a few salats. If it was a man and he said, I miss salat in jamaat, I can understand. I don't pray any salat, just sometimes. I go, what? You are doing, you're studying the deen more than the other hundreds of thousands of women in your area, and you don't do salat. Like, how is that possible? It shocked me. But then obviously it must be a reality if people aren't going to tell that to people. Now the good thing is that she obviously had something in her heart, the feeling of guilt, which means the heart wasn't completely dead. Now if we can't even ask for help, and we don't help ourselves and we can't ask anybody else, and that means your heart is dead. What's after that? If you don't do salat, heart is dead. That is serious. You cannot miss salat. In fact, once you join a madrasa, I'm not saying you guys miss salat, but I'm saying once you join a madrasa, then you should be doing your qada. You should be thinking, I need to get up to standard, because there's certain qualities, there's certain, to get the most out of your study, you need a receptive heart, receptive mind. As Ibn al-Jawzi said, he says the problem with shahwa, the problem with the nafs and shahwa, is that when the nafs becomes attached to any kind of haram or even sometimes permissible attraction and pleasure of this world, then it takes with it, he says, al-aql wal-dhihn wal-qalb. It takes the heart with it, it takes the dhihn with it, the mind, and it takes the intellect. It's like, wow, it dominates everything. That's why, though you know it's bad for you, drugs for example, you know they're bad intellectually, you know they're bad for you, but the desire for it is so great that it basically overcomes your intellectual understanding, and you do it despite your knowledge of it. Anyway, so we need basically a receptive heart to get the most out of the knowledge that we gain here. So we seriously have to consider that. Irresolution with the fara'id is just not possible. Okay, nawafil and so on, they will come slowly, inshaAllah. I remember once Mufti Taqi Uthmani had come, and we were together with him at somebody's house, and he did all of his awwabin after Maghrib, the extra rakats. So I decided to ask him that he's a very busy person, believe me. If somebody's busy, he is very, very, very busy. And I've been with him on a number of journeys in different conferences, just recently in Jordan, in Abu Dhabi, numerous places I've been with him. He's very busy. He doesn't waste time, very disciplined. So how much time do you have to do your nawafil? That's all extra, isn't it? He could say, I've got all of this whole dunya to take care of, all of these different demands and everything. So a few nawafil here and there doesn't make a difference, does it? I'm doing the fara'id at least. So I asked him, when did you start this? He said, well, when I first started teaching hadith, then I started reading these hadith, so I thought I should start these additional nawafil virtues. And remember, we're talking about nawafil here, optional worship. We're not talking about the fara'id. There's no compromise with the fara'id. The fara'id have to be done whether you are a alim, no alim, student, no student, Muslim, you have to do it. As long as you're a Muslim, you have to do it. So anyway, he knew of the irresolution of the servants in dealing with him, so he made obedience to him obligatory for them. Because if he left it to our will, do it when you like, we do it sometimes, we won't do it sometimes, we'll make excuses. Human nature. I mean, we're messing around even though it's an obligation. Allah says, made an obligation. This is to deal with our nature of being irresolute. And then after that, subhanallah, the merciful Lord that He is, He made something wajib on you, and then He gives you more reward for the wujub, for the obligation, the obligatory acts, than He gives you for the nawafil acts. There are a few exceptions to this. There are a few nafil acts or sunnah acts that get more reward than fard acts. Do you know any of them? Salam, right? That's one. What else? Okay. So there's a few exceptions, but generally speaking, fard has, if Allah in Ramadan expands a fard 70 times, multiplies it, and every nafil becomes like a fard, then can you imagine if this is 70 times extra in Ramadan, and He says then a nafil becomes like a fard, then that must be 70 times more. Just from this equation. Allah knows best though. Anyway, so then He says He drove them to obedience with the chains of obligation. Your Lord is amazed at people who are driven to paradise with chains. He made things obligatory on you. You've taken that consciousness to your heart and said, this is fard, so I must do it. And because of that, you'll go into Jannah, and Allah will say, wah, you people are, I obligated this to you. You didn't necessarily do it on your own volition and but you did it because it's an obligation. Now you're going to Jannah because of it. That's Allah's maqsad. He wants us to succeed in the hereafter. So He obligates these things for us. Don't see them as a burden. See them as an absolute honor. Absolute honor. In every state and circumstance, the worship of Allah Most High and the display of one's servanthood, ubudiyya, are imperative and incumbent on the servants of Allah. This is the demand of intelligence, whether Allah Most High decrees that worship is obligatory on us or not. Because we are His slaves, and the duty of a slave is servanthood. So there's no two ways about it. That's the default status. That's how we should be anyway. Regardless of whether his master commands him or not. But on account of man's indolence and defects and weaknesses regarding the rendition of worship, and out of Allah's boundless mercy, Allah Most High decrees the duties of worship obligatory on His servants. Now, if we have been told since we are young that you better pray, otherwise you're going to go to hell, or you're going to be punished. Namaz to padni hai, you must pray namaz. Then get all of that out of your head. Yes, punishment is there, but now understand that we must pray out of love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not just to save ourselves from the punishment. Unfortunately, we bring our children up like this. We never tell them why they should pray. We never make them love Allah. Right? I'm speaking in very general, in a very general sense. So when we grow up, we pray just because to protect ourselves. If we pray out of love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that every salat counts. There's a word of, I don't know if I told you this before, but Junayd al-Baghdadi, when he was seen afterwards, he mentioned that all of these advanced things of spirituality, all of that went out. What helped me were the rukayat, were the small raka'at that I did at night. So now if I'm getting lazy, I'm just telling you personally, if I'm getting lazy, I don't want to do the extra sunnah or nawafil or whatever, then I just remember, this is going to help me. There's an added bonus. It's going to help me. I don't have enough anyway, so let me just do this just to spur you on. Not just to protect yourself. When you do something out of love, it is going to be much more fruitful than when you do it just out of trying to protect yourself. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, out of His boundless mercy, Allah Most High decrees the duties of worship obligatory on His servants. Along with this, He notifies them of His promises of paradise for obedience. He further warns the transgressors of the chastisement of hell. The similitude of this imposition of worship as an obligatory duty is like a chain that is tied around the neck of a prisoner, The prisoner is taken by means of the chain in any desired direction, irrespective of his wishes. Similarly, by decreeing obedience obligatory, Allah Most High draws the indolent ones towards worship and obedience. It's like even if you're at work, wherever you may be, whether you're in a theme park, you have to go and you have to pray. So it's like, in a sense, it's like a chain, in a sense. But this chain example becomes very fruitful in the hereafter. That's why he's saying, another example of mercy and love is a guardian who trains and punishes his ward who perpetrates wrong. He does not permit unbridled freedom to the child so that he can do as he pleases. The child is thus compelled to do his duties, even the duties he dislikes, and to abandon detestable characteristics whether he likes it or not. Because children do not know what's good or bad for them. It is maybe surprising that some servants have to be drawn towards paradise by means of chains. However, because these deeds have been imposed on them as compulsory duties, they oppose their desires in the execution of righteousness, and thus they gain entry into paradise. So Allah will then just be amazed that all of these people, they're going into Jannah because they were pulled into Jannah because of my obligation. There will be people like that. If we can go even like that, it'd be wonderful. If we can get to, inshallah, Jannah. Something that I recently read which was very interesting. Ibn al-Jawzi is a very thoughtful, very reflective individual. So he said that he was always trying to achieve the highest. His aspirations were very lofty. His intentions were always of great, his ambitions were always very great. So he says that I sabartu. What does the word sabara mean? Not sabara, sabar. Huh? No, that's sabah. Sabara, from seen. I give you, it's sometimes used as a technical term, as-sabru wa taqsim in usul. Anyway, sabara means to assess, to investigate. It means to take a survey, right? Typical, survey, when you do a survey, it's like that. Sabartu, I have done a survey of the aslaf, of the ulama of the past. What I wanted to see is who was able to combine to the highest level both ilm and amal. Because he's saying, when you try to do more ilm, then it has an effect on your amal. If you try to do too much amal, then you learn less. Who was it that managed to accomplish themselves to the highest levels in both sides? This is quite an interesting topic. Now he's writing in the 7th century. So he's saying, what I have realized, he said, the 3 people that come to mind after doing this assessment. Number 1, Al-Hasan al-Basri. Right? And there's no doubt about that. Because you read any book of fiqh, any book of hadith, any book of tafsir, and he's always there. He's everywhere. It's like he's talking about tafsir, he's talking about fiqh, he's got aqwal in everything. And yet in his amal, subhanallah. Right? Number 2, this one will be a surprise for some people, because most people just know him as a muhaddith. Sufyan al-Thawri. Right? Most people just know him as a muhaddith, but Sufyan al-Thawri, subhanallah. And the third one, again, probably an agreed upon individual, Ahmad ibn Hanbal, rahimahumullah ta'ala. And then he mentions that if somebody wants to add a 4th, and he mentions a particular name which I've forgotten now, then I could agree with that. Personally, I would probably add there somebody like Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak, right? Because an amazing individual. It's difficult, it's very difficult to choose, but that's what he came up with. And then he says something very interesting. He said, look, the one thing about them is that al-fadlu lil-mutaqaddimi. They had the fadl of being first. They had the special position of coming earlier. Nobody can overcome them in that regard because they've come and gone, right? Now can you imagine these people who have been so well placed? We could never reach their status because they have become so pivotal in the transmission of the deen to us. They came at the right time. When the hadith was being codified, when the isnad, until it was written. People like Shu'bah, people like Sufyan al-Thawri, Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak, right? And all of these narrators that you constantly, Sufyan ibn Uyayna, right? They just came at the right time. They've been now etched into history and there's nothing that we can do about it. It's just people coming at the right time. However, then he does say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, however, can give fadl of another sort to others. And he says there can be some people who come later who could possibly accomplish the similar thing, though they will never be the earlier ones to do it. So he leaves the room open, the door open to that. So this is just a bit of inspiration. These are our role models. We need to know their names. We need to hopefully learn more about them and appreciate when they come about. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from us. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to, because these people, when you take their names, some people might say when you take their names, when you love these people, rahmah comes down, right? You might see that as a bit of an exaggeration, right? Success is gained through them. Yes, because when you mention them, you get inspired. And when you mention the awliya, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't like us having enmity with the awliya, and He declares war against it, then if you mention the awliya and you're enthused by them, then don't you think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will, subhanallah, would love that discussion, because we're only mentioning them because of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself. So all of this, and then the whole idea of that inspiration is to follow in their footsteps, to be amazed by that. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I mentioned this particular point just 2 days ago in, where was I? Imperial College. And after the bayan, the questions that were coming were, okay, these, but we have no time to study the deen. What can we do? And I talked about Abdullah ibn Mubarak. What can we do? Do you understand? What can we do? That's why these stories are inspirational, the biographies are inspirational. That's why Ibn al-Jawzi, rahimahullah, he says that if you can't be with somebody, read their seerah. Humans learn from how somebody enacts and personifies the sunnah. One is you read the hadith, which is extremely beneficial. The other thing is, how are these hadiths and sunnah of the Prophet and the sharia, how is it manifested in real life? So when you read Abdullah ibn Mubarak, when you read Hassan al-Basri, Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, and all of these different people, rahimahumullah ta'ala, then you can take from each of them. When you read one book, when you listen to one lecture on them, or whatever the case is, there'll be 1 or 2 points you can learn from each of these. His mizaj may be different to yours, right? He may be much softer than us, or we may be harsher, or maybe he was a lot more bolder and we're a lot more laid back. But there will be something or the other that we can take from each of these. That's why the benefit in learning from these people, because they manifested the Quran and personified the knowledge and the sharia for us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq.